Hey guys, listen up.
This is the SEC Insider Hit, powered by Miss Kelly Furniture, Mississippi's number one sleep store.
Oh, man. Good morning. Welcome in on a rainy week here in the state of Mississippi. We welcome in our friend from somewhere out in the woods on the West Coast in Oregon. He is Dave Bartoo at CFB Matrix. Yes, he had the original Matrix as far as college football and recruiting and wins and losses. TLC, talent, location, coaching effect, and then he's doing 100 other things in the world of college football, including advising athletic directors and coaches and maybe conference commissioners and presidents and so on. Dave Bartoo from a tree in Oregon on the Modelo guest line. Bartoo, good morning, buddy.
Dude, fighting fires, chasing elk. That's what it's all about here in Oregon right now.
Well, yes, it is. Well, let me tell you what it's all about here. It's all about football. So high school football starts in a week and a half. And then, of course, college football, Labor Day weekend, and the NFL the Thursday after. Not that you'll watch the first 4 weeks of the season. We know. We give you a pass. You'll be elk hunting. But your numbers speak for themselves, and you've already got the whole thing set up. But I want to start with SEC expansion. You've been ripping off tweets on Twitter and kind of laying it out. So what does this mean for the SEC, especially in football, Dave? We can get into Olympic sports at some point, but what does it mean for football adding Oklahoma and Texas at some point down the road?
Well, I think what you have is, from a football standpoint, there may not be much change at all. And what I mean by that is a lot of this is going to largely depend on changing the conference schedule and a change in the playoffs. Because you add an Oklahoma and a Texas, if you remain at 8 conference games, the Ole Miss and Mississippi State schedule really isn't going to change. Difficulty is going to be about the same. Wins and losses are going to be the same. If the playoff doesn't change, you're going to get 1, maybe 2 SEC teams into the playoffs, depending on the year. Not much is going to change there. So the only thing that really might change, and the reason for doing this is the number one expectation is that the money flow changes. That's it. So we have to kind of wait and see what is going to happen down the road. But the difference between no change and major change is simply going to 9 conference games and expanding the playoffs to 8 or 12. If those 2 things happen, God forbid they go to 10 conference games, now you're going to see a major dynamic shift in the postseason participation with the SEC and expected win-loss records across the conference.
All right, the last part, I think that the college football playoff will do what the SEC wants to do because there's too many great brands, and that's just if they expand to 12, the SEC will be fine. They'll be able to get 3 in a year,
6 in a year.
Yeah, 6.
6. No, 6, dude.
Really?
It depends on how many conference games they go to. They stay at 8, they can put 6 out of 12 in there. No problem.
Wow.
Seriously. That is you want to talk about trying to monopolize it, is they go to 12, I do not budge off of 8 conference games. Now I know a lot of people say, well, what about the schedules and what about what people like? Dude, it's not about the butts in the stadium. It's about the eyeballs streaming this stuff.
Yep.
That's what it's about. It doesn't matter where Georgia plays the game at. Georgia fans are going to watch it, okay? And so, you want 6 teams in a 12-team playoff? Stay at 8. I think that is extremely likely that it could happen every other year.
Okay. So if we stay at 8 conference games, Bartoo could see up to 6 6 teams making a 12-team playoff. If they go to 9, I'm sure that Bartu, have you already run the number? Does that drop to 3 or 4, 2? How do you see that?
Yeah, well, that's going to depend on the year. It really is, and how the scheduling is set up. But I still say even if they go to 9, you're still looking at 3 to 4 teams. Staying at 8, I think, is really how you're going to try to maximize it. But when you have 16 teams, again, the playoffs are a numbers game. So you're playing with 16 teams in a 9-game schedule. The Big Ten has 9 games. The Pac-12 has 9 games, but the Pac-12 only has 12 teams. Big Ten only has 14. So in the game of numbers, the SEC still has a numbers advantage trying to get teams into the top 12.
All right, and you can take out all the teams that were in the Big 12. They won't be competing for it. Not that they were really anyway. But do you think that they'll still go to 12 teams? I'm sorry. Do you think that they'll still expand it, the college football playoff, to a 12-team playoff, Dave?
I don't know. Something I really don't know right now. It'll be an interesting. I guess it'll be interesting to watch what happens in terms of how everybody deals with the SEC expansion. I think it might depend on how many conference games the SEC goes to. That might be part of it as well. But ultimately, it all comes down to one thing, and that simply is going to be, can my revenue per team increase? That's why I think expansion's pretty close to being done right now, because nobody can do that. Okay, I know we just had a big earthquake with Texas and Oklahoma, but these are just one-off things. There's outside of Notre Dame, there's really no other program that can come into any conference and say, I can move the bar for everybody. I am going to trade my ability to make money for your ability to help me maximize it. And outside of Notre Dame, I don't see anybody else out there really able to do that. I know we've heard, Clemson, Florida State talk to the SEC, but I think that's going to be tempered right now until the SEC settles their conference and the playoffs are settled and things like that. So I really don't see anything happening significantly going forward with any more realignment. That's why I think with the playoffs, it's just going to come down to money. How much more money can each of us make? How can we expand our piece of the pie per team and stay ahead in the money race, the arms race? That's what it'll probably just come down to, as it always does.
But the Big 12's done, right? Now that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving, I think they'll leave before July 1st, 2025. But the bottom line is this nonsense, you're hearing about it. You've been tweeting about it. Adding AAC members, blah, blah, blah. The Big 12 is done as we know it, right?
I don't know. It depends on how the playoff structure is done. If the Big 12 is included in the playoff structure with the automatic berth, no, they're not done. Are they going to be able to make as much money as everybody else? No, they're not. So they're going to fall behind in the recruiting and the arms race for sports overall. But if they still have a spot at the table, they're not done from that sense. But this is why Oklahoma and Texas had to leave, is because they were falling behind in the arms race. They had to make the call to the SEC. The SEC didn't need Oklahoma and Texas. Texas and Oklahoma needed the SEC to extract their value. That was the trade-off, because the Big 12 wasn't doing it. But I don't think the Big 12 itself is dead from the standpoint of participating in major college football. As a national championship contender, yeah, there are 2 national title contenders left. But this goes back to, I think the answer to your question is, are they dead? I think it goes back to the playoff setup. And if it stays at 4 teams, yeah, they're probably done. They're going to be relegated down to a G5 recruiting level, very likely. If they're guaranteed a playoff spot and they still have that access, then I don't think they're done. They're never going to compete for a national title, but they can stay viable and competitive going forward.
So they can go the college football playoff with a 12-team playoff and just get smoked, but it'll still be money for them. That may be one option for the Big 12. Or, as you said, they just become a combination of another conference, G5 conference, right?
It's the accessibility. See, if they go through this playoff thing, and let's say it's 8 teams, 12 teams, who cares what the number is, okay? And the Big 12 has a guaranteed spot at the table. Win the conference, you are in. So then, now the next question is, can the Big 12 expand and make more money? Okay, can they bring a Cincinnati, a UCF, et cetera, in and increase the revenue per team?
No.
That's the ultimate denominator here, okay, is the money per team with expansion. This is why Oklahoma State and nobody else was included with Texas and Oklahoma, because none of them could come into the SEC and forecast increased revenue for everybody. It would drop. So why include somebody that is going to take money out of your pocket? That's dumb expansion from a business standpoint. So even with the Big 12, it just might be the Big 8 because they can maximize the money they have with those 8 teams versus diluting it by bringing 2 or 4 more in. So we'll see where that goes down the road. I think a lot of it just hinges on where the playoff is going to be 5 years from now.
Okay. What do you think? Just give me do you think it goes to 12?
No, I don't think it should go to 12. I think it should go to 8 at the most. I'd like to see a non-conference game cut out. I don't think we need to have 16, 17, 18 games to win a national title. And that's just my personal opinion. I think we can do it with as many games as we have right now. So to me, I think it would be nice to see 3 non-conference games, 8 conference games, the 12th one, as we talked about previously on the show, is just matching up divisional rankings. So everybody gets 12 games in, and then you have an 8-team playoff, which, something, if you went 5 conference champions and 3 wild cards, you're still looking at 3 to 4 SEC teams in that potentially every single year.
Okay. Dave Bartu talking SEC expansion and college football playoff on the Modelo guest line. He's a great follow on Twitter at CFB Matrix. Let's talk about alumni bases and enrollment in the Big Ten to the SEC. And the only way the SEC pulls this off revenue-wise, Bartu, I think, is where you've been going, is just because of the commitment quotient. Talk about how much bigger the Big Ten living alumni bases are and their student enrollment across their league compared to the SEC, even though the SEC is growing.
Right, the SEC is growing, but what a lot of people get caught up with when they're trying to compare revenue or prestige or whatever is they simply look at, well, the SEC has half the top 20 recruiters. The SEC plays at a higher level of football. They got more top 25 games. They have more national champions. But ultimately, that is just barely enough to balance them out with the revenue that the Big Ten has, because the advantage with the Big Ten in terms of producing revenue is that alumni base. These are massive land-grant universities. Right now, rough numbers, okay, when you look at on-campus enrollment, and I say on campus because a lot of people say, well, look at the UCF alumni base. Well, UCF alumni base is largely a commuter online.
Sure.
It doesn't have the kids that come in, and you and I mean, we've been through it. We've been through the university where we leave the house, we go live on campus for a year or two, and we're on that campus. We're either living there, going to school there, we're off campus in an apartment or a house. But by the time you're 22, 20 to 25% of your life has been at that university. Mm-hmm. There is, I don't know about you, but for me, there is always going to be a connection with me and walking onto that University of Oregon campus. I love going back to
no question.
Campus. I love going to the stadium. It's just, maybe it makes me feel young. I don't know what it is. But there is like this eternal bond between me and U of O, and I think a lot of people can feel that way, whether it's Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Michigan State, you name it. So I think that bond that's developed carries forward in sports and recognition. And right now you look at it, if you throw Oklahoma and Texas into the mix, this year the SEC is going to produce about 350,000 new graduate alumni. Now, go over to the Big Ten, that number is just over 700,000. So in 10 years, the Big Ten is going to produce 7 to 8 million more alumni versus 3.5 to 4 million for the SEC. Now, those are still really big numbers, but just think about all the more eyeballs that are now streaming that can pull a Michigan, a Penn State, an Iowa, a Wisconsin game from anywhere in the world now. Things have changed. Cable is slowly eroding away. Streaming is where everything is at. The accessibility. Look at your show. Anybody can listen to Bo Bounds in South Alabama, Southern California, or South Africa simultaneously. Doesn't matter where Out of Bounds fans are; they can find it. So I think that's your balance. Your ultimate revenue programs are going to be in the Big Ten, and they're going to be in the SEC, both for quality of football and just sheer volume. Somehow they both balance themselves out where projections in 4 or 5 years, they're both going to be earning the same amount of ridiculous money. Okay, but that is really when people say, hey, well, how can the Big Ten make as much as the SEC? It's the number of eyeballs they're producing every year is, I think, the big difference maker versus the passion and focus on football in the Southeast Conference.
Dave Bartu on the Out of Bounds show. Okay, so what would you do? What does this mean for Mississippi State and Ole Miss? See, I think it's actually slightly less difficult with Oklahoma. Here's why, with Oklahoma and Texas. They are going to break up the fact that MSU and Ole Miss have to play Bama, not even including Auburn, LSU, and A&M every year. And I know it'll be rotated in to where, you may get Georgia and you may whatever. I think the fact that they're not going to play Bama every year alone makes it slightly less difficult for slightly than MSU and Ole Miss. Your thoughts?
8 or 9 conference games. That's what it comes down to me. 8?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if it's 8, then like I said, there's going to be really no effect.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change. If it stays at 8, oh my gosh, Alabama's gone, Texas is in. Alabama's gone, Oklahoma's in. If it's not Oklahoma, it's A&M. If it's not A&M, it's Georgia. But it's not all of them, right? The killer from a record standpoint is going to be going from 8 to 9. Mm-hmm. Because you are basically picking up, on average, 1.5 losses a year extra by going from 8 to 9. So that, to me, is really the ultimate difference. I agree with you. If it stays at 8 conference games, no change. Making more money, record's going to be about the same going forward over a 5-10 year period. The big question mark is it going to go to 9? God forbid it goes to 10. But if it goes to 9, it's going to make about a 1.5 game difference per year in the loss column going forward.
And we know that Texas and Oklahoma is not going to win as many. Well, Texas is a different deal because they haven't performed at the level we think they should. But
not recently.
No, but they had, Mac bottled it from about 01 to 09 where they were winning double-digit games and played in 2 national championships and won 1. So Texas and Oklahoma, too, will not win as many games by joining the SEC, right?
Oh, God, no. No. I mean, look at Oklahoma and Texas. If they didn't have each other outside of the playoffs and Ohio State, I don't think they've faced a single top 25 recruiter in the last 8 years. Think about that. I mean, it's bloody amazing. If you take out their rivalry game, and you take out, because there was a home and home, I believe, with Texas and Ohio State and Oklahoma and Ohio State. Because outside of those two in the Big 12, there are no top 25 recruiters. None. they could conceivably, if they go to a 9-conference game schedule in the SEC, they could be facing 4 to 6 top 25 recruiters every year. Actually, top 20. Top 25 is borderline 6 to 8 a year. Their expected win total versus playing a bunch of non-top 25 recruiters versus virtually all top 25 recruiters, I think that's going to have an impact on expectations.
Dave Bartoo on the Out of Bounds show and the Modelo guest line. If you're Florida State and Clemson, there's rumors that there could be some flirting back channels between the SEC and Clemson and Florida State. What do you make of that, Dave?
Sure. Absolutely. There has to be, right? Why? Because of the big number one reason, money. Okay. Is Clemson and Florida State making as much money as everybody else in the SEC? Yes or no?
No.
No. So they want to make more money. They think their brand is SEC money, Big Ten money worthwhile. Now, here's the ultimate question, though. Okay, it takes two to tango. This is for everybody listening, all you got to do is get out a pen or pencil and something to write on. And the first question is, does program X make enough money to compete with everybody else? If the answer is no, then they're going to go flirt with somebody that can make them the money they need to be competitive. So we just answered the first question. Clemson and Florida State are not making SEC or Big Ten money. All right? So they want to. They think their brand is good enough. So the ultimate question is when they call a Greg Sankey, and when they call Warren at the Big Ten, they say, hey, we want to make Big Ten SEC money, then the next question is, can they bring enough money? Are they strong enough and powerful enough to raise the bar for everybody across the board? Okay, so if Clemson and Florida State are coming to, let's say they want to go into the SEC, and everybody in the SEC is making $100 million apiece. So $1.6 billion pie between 16 teams. That means Clemson, because if I'm the SEC, I'm like, I want $100 million. That means Clemson and Florida State each need to project more than $100 million of revenue apiece. Otherwise, let's say they project 80 apiece. That means the other 16 teams are taking a haircut.
Then they're not coming because they don't bring
taking a haircut.
They don't bring, even though they're two big brands, they don't bring enough to the table like Ohio State or Southern Cal, and that might, I don't even know how those numbers would look. But again, great brands, especially in the Southeast. Florida State doesn't even care. They didn't even fill up their stadium when they were winning.
But it's great brands. But we're talking. It's two separate things.
I don't think they bring the streaming, the eyeballs, Bartoo.
Right. See, you have to separate the quality of the football. You know, so I mean, if a North Carolina brought in, 300 million eyeballs every time they played, who cares what their quality of football is, right? It's about the money it can be developed. All right, you look at the NFL. It's a big piece. Everybody's splitting up the pie. There's revenue sharing, and there's teams that go 2-14. Nobody cares because everybody's eyes are on the NFL. Doesn't matter what it is. There's winners and losers. I get it. So to me, if with the SEC expansion, all right, there's two sides to the coin. One, who needs to make more money? Okay, Clemson and Florida State, we just said, want to make more money. But can they, from a media standpoint, quality of brand, quality of football aside, that doesn't matter. We are talking about business revenue. And can they raise the bar above the average of the 16 teams in the SEC going forward, 2025 forward? If the answer is no, then they're not taking them.
Then they're not coming.
Clemson's the number one recruiter and the best in football. It doesn't matter. You either raise the revenue or you don't. There's your line in the sand.
Okay. Dave Bartoo on expansion in college football or conference realignment, and the college football playoff. Okay, anything else that you want to dive into as far as?
Well, as far as
I know there's a lot of layers here.
I think that.
Oh no,
hold
on. Let's stay on
really
this
left out there.
real quick.
Yeah.
That tells me that Clemson and Florida State are going to get left behind, even though Florida State's dropped off. Maybe they come back, whatever. If they're not going to make the cut in the SEC, and the ACC will never care about football, like the SEC or Big Ten. So if they're not going to make the cut, I wonder what Dabo's thinking. One, Norvell's early, but whatever. What could they start? It may take a little while, okay? Because Clemson's on this run. You see it. You see their recruiting trajectory and so on. And they've broken through range-bound recruiting, and not many teams do that. And I acknowledge all that because he's special and what they've done. But could it start to hurt them in the next 5, 6, 7 years? Clemson and Florida State, Bartu.
Well, money-wise, it's an arms race. But what are they going to do about it? Really, at this point, what are you going to do about it? And it's not just football. It's every sport, because all the money you're making on this isn't going right back into football. You're making so much money, you can now become great at everything else.
Right.
So with Clemson and Florida State, I just, to me, it is what it is. They're not going to have Big Ten or SEC money. I don't think they bring enough to the table to raise that revenue bar where somebody wants to bring them in. I think the SEC and the Big Ten are, for all intents and purposes, they're tapped out right now. They don't need anybody. I think there's only one team on the table that can raise the revenue in the SEC or the ACC or the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, and that's Notre Dame. And I think what is their contract good through 2035?
Wow.
So as far as realignment goes, I think we're pretty much done, man. I know that sounds weird, just coming off of a 7.5 earthquake in college football and destruction everywhere. But when the dust settles and you step back and you look at it from a business monetary standpoint, we're done. Okay? Everybody that wants to make more money, Clemson, Florida State, isn't going to make enough for anybody else to go, yeah, come on in, we want to dilute our current revenue. No, it's not worthwhile. That's why I think, for the most part, outside of Notre Dame, I don't think there's going to be any more shifts for quite a while.
I wonder, Dave Bartu on the Out of Bounds show, I wonder if this will get Dabo to jump. To like if Orgeron if LSU lets go of Orgeron. Something like that. Because I see Saban at Alabama another 6-7 years. The guy's a freak. And I think COVID made him realize he didn't want to sit at home. That's the rumors out of T-Town that the 2 weeks that he had to sit at home, he didn't know what to do. And so
he doesn't know anything else.
That's right.
He's just going to work till he dies.
Yeah, which is insane for some of us. Look at that and go, wow. For him, it's what he wants. Everybody's different. It's all good. All right. So, but what I'm saying is,
with it though.
What?
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah, if he's happy with it, good on him.
Yeah. Okay, but I think this could prompt Dabo to look around if an LSU or something like that comes open. Bartu.
Oh yeah. I think it depends on, like I said, is accessibility to the playoffs, but certainly we probably won't see something like that. I don't think a lot of people are going to come to the realization, and what we're talking about. Hell, I don't know. It may not come true. It may not be right. I'm just taking a stab at what I think is the most likely logical outcome to this. But I don't think we're going to really see a fallout of it. Engage this conversation for probably another 5, 7, 10 years.
Okay,
that's a long ways down the road.
Yeah.
But I agree with you from the standpoint,
like Matt Campbell at Iowa State.
Forward,
He had been saying no. I think once he wrapped his brain around it, or someone explained, not that he's not a smart guy, but someone explained that it's over, dude. I mean, this run, you've said no to some teams. I don't know exactly what he's looking for, whatever. But I would have to believe now he's ready, Bartu.
Could be. Maybe though he just wants to have a legacy at Iowa State. Wants to be there forever. Likes it there. Wants to be Gary Patterson. I'm gonna stick around here and just be a legend at Iowa State. I'm not gonna be legend nationally. I'm just gonna have a really awesome, fun career here. If the Big 12 still has access to the playoff when the dust settles, maybe he stays there forever. But also agree with you on the flip side is if he has higher aspirations of competing for national title, this, that, and the other, well, he probably wasn't going to do that with Iowa State in the first place, but I think this is going to make probably a few guys like a Dabo, like a Campbell, maybe consider long-term where all this is going to fall out and where they want to be when it does.
Yeah, because there's not many Beamers, Snyders, Pattersons that
no, but there's always going to be those guys, though.
That's true.
There's going to be the guy like a Saban where you go, dude, you've made multi-generational money. You don't need to do this anymore. You're the greatest recruiter of your generation. You don't need to keep doing this. But he's going to do it till he drops because he's happy to do it. And I think everybody should just keep doing what they're happy with, even if it is work. In our opinions. But then there's also the guys like a Chris Peterson that go, dude, I made my money. Bob Stoops, I made my money. I did what I could. Boom, I'm out of here. I'm going to live the last 20 years of my life the way I want to, and it has going to have nothing to do with coaching. And then you're going to get a guy like a Gary Patterson or a Beamer that just says, national title would be cool, but I just love being here the rest of my life, and I'll just sit here and coach here. And that may be Campbell. It's not. There's going to be somebody else. Maybe it's Fitzpatrick at Northwestern. Those guys are always going to be there. There's always going to be a different level of guy in college football with different aspirations. And that's one of the cool things I think about college football is that we can have guys like that. You don't see that in the NFL. There's a constant churn and fight in the NFL for staying alive game after game, week after week, year after year. In college, we can have guys that stay at a place for a really long time and be happy with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wonder what that noise was about Penn State. I guess that was just a total,
I think people got to realize is if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're both making about the same amount of money.
Yep.
People go, oh, we should go to the SEC. Why? Actually, the Big Ten is probably a better place to be anyways. I mean, if you're Penn State, if you're making $80 million a year in the Big Ten and $80 million a year in the SEC, which path to a national title is easier? You're damn right. Why would I leave and get beat up and risk more losses in order to make the same amount of money?
Yeah.
See, Texas and Oklahoma had to do it because they're making half the money. They looked at the drawing board and like, ooh,
I wonder what
this doesn't pencil out right.
I wonder what the Pac-12 money is going to look. Now they hired a new conference commissioner whose expertise is media rights and all that. And he's going to get the streaming, and I wonder. This. I mean, there's big schools out there and so on. Now your Oregon loves it, but there's a lot of schools that can kind of whatever. I wonder what the Pac-12's what their dollars look like. How can they monetize maybe on the next deal or restructure, Bartu? Yeah,
it's only 3 or 4 years away, so I think they just got to pump the brakes on it. I know a lot of people are talking about Pac-12 expansion. I do not see it. I do not. There's no team out there outside of Notre Dame. You could say maybe BYU. BYU has a gazillion eyeballs worldwide, but what's inside their box that they bring doesn't fit anywhere at all. The only one, like I said, that does is Notre Dame. So I think the Pac-12 just sits right there because adding anybody from
dilutes the pie.
The 8 teams left of the Big 12,
okay.
The piece of the pie is going to get reduced. So that don't make no sense to me.
Okay. We'll have to talk. We'll wrap it up, but we'll have to talk about your theory about more Pac-12, Big Ten non-conference matchups. So, one, the Pac-12 can get into the Central and Eastern time zone. And two, all those big alumni bases that you've referenced, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State, can play more in the LA metro area market and some other markets out there that could actually give them some juice, so to speak. You know?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I see that coming down the pipe more than anything. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. But from an expansion standpoint, I think expansion is done for right now.
Okay.
I think we have to wait and see how the playoff is going to be remolded or not, to really try to gauge how conferences are going to survive or not survive and react to that going forward.
All right. There you go. Bartu said it. Mississippi State or Ole Miss will win a national title in the next 5 to 6 years. And we're going to put him to it.
Baby.
It's a lock. College football playoff, all that kind of good stuff. Bartu at CFB Matrix. He's doing 100 other things, but you can find everything on Twitter, and then he'll point you in the right direction. We'll start having Bartu on a lot more, other than maybe a 2 or 3 week stretch of elk hunting. Bartu, be good, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Take it easy, brother. Thanks for having me.
The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by a Dave Bartu Tito's Vodka Bloody Mary. Enjoy one game day, maybe with some bacon and some pickled okra and some olives. Tito's Vodka Bloody Mary at Bravo or Drago's or Kessler Prime. That was Dave Bartu at CFB Matrix on the Modelo guest line.